Hi, everyone. I hope I can see that people are successfully joining. We'll get ready to go in a little bit. We're just waiting for more people to join. I'm Amelia. I'm the Assistant Director of Disability Services. I am here helping with the presentation today. Our director, Jason, will introduce himself in a little bit once the presentation gets started, but we're just waiting for people to join and then we'll get going. Um, if you're in California, welcome. Perfect day to join a Zoom webinar about disability services, given all the rain. Probably weren't going to go anywhere anyway. So, welcome. Um, okay. Okay. People are just going to join, but we'll go ahead and get started. Again, if for those of you who just now joined, I'm Amelia. I'm the Assistant Director of Disability Services. We're going to talk to you today about our services here at Chapman, and I'm going to send it over to our director, Jason McAlexander, to walk you through our presentation.
Hi, welcome everybody. So glad you were able to join us and learn about how we do things. So I've been a director here about 15 years, so I pretty much know how the university works, and we're here to help support your students, but help them learn how to work a system because they're coming out of K through 12 and coming into another level of independence and self-determination and those kinds of things. And we want to show you how we help the students move to that phase. So some of the things that we do are, some of the things that we'll cover are classroom accommodations, how we do those things. So usually they don't typically end up being too different, but the process in how the student uses them is the bigger difference. And we'll touch on some differences between high school and college to prepare the students for that transition. There's housing accommodations that are appropriate sometimes as well, and we'll tell you about that process. And we have some various other support services that are around the area that are outside of our office that are very helpful to students that we found. So we'll jump right in, and more specifically, what we do about classroom accommodations. And typically, more of the common accommodations that this K through 12 students are used to is extra testing time or some alteration to the exam experience. Not the exam, we don't alter the exam too much, but more time, or maybe you need to type out answers versus handwrite, those little things like that. We have a whole testing center devoted to those kinds of needs. And that is in our main office is a small office where we just do the intakes and we handle issues that come up during when students are here. The testing center is a different building. We have an office of where students take any kind of accommodated test, extra time or typing or use of the computer, those kinds of things. We have a testing center for those. So we have an online system where students save a seat in preparation for an upcoming exam, and we do all things behind the scenes to get that exam. And then the student, instead of going to the class, they come to our testing center and take their test there. So it's like a online reservation where you reserve a spot, and then we have a coordinated system in the background that goes to the professor that we get that exam and behind the scenes. And so the student comes to the testing center and takes their test with us at a reservation time. And we'll go into how we do all that. Books in alternative format is another thing that we typically do at the main office. And that is when students want to listen to the content of a book rather than read it with their eyes. Typically, students with dyslexia or attention disorders, they like to listen to information and also look at it at the same time. So we do books in alternative format, and that alternative format is these days it's a PDF, and your computers, your laptops have the ability to speak that text out loud. You put your earbuds on, and it's very helpful to soaking in information in a distracting environment. And audio recording of lectures, we're trying to move a little bit toward that versus getting a copy of somebody else's notes, like in the classroom. You maybe have a hand function problem or attention problem. Um, and so getting that important information that is the lecture down into some coherent notes that you can take home and use as good studying tools. We What used to be done is get a copy of somebody else's notes, and then you can compare, contrast, and make sure you didn't miss anything. But if you have audio recordings, now that the there's apps in the phones that have all AI and all that kind of stuff, and in cloud, they clean it up. They can clean up the recordings and make it more navigatable as a studying tool, because you will have a lot of information if you have the audio form of an hour-long lecture. That's a lot of information. And so, but those things have got more sophisticated over the years, these apps, these recording apps. So they're good studying tools. They're good things to look up, Google, and see what the latest apps are. And there's probably a variety of apps out there. We have one specific application called Otter, OTTER .ai, and it's a free app you can download on your phone or your device. And it's a recording app, but it transcribes what it hears. So you'll have, when you take it home to study, that app, you open up your phone or computer, and you can you can read the transcripts of what the professor said, but you can also hear them say it. So we think that is a good studying tool to have as well. And it comes as an accommodation of recording. You're allowed to record the lecture, and we offer this Otter to you, but you can use whatever recording device you want. The accommodation is to record the professor's presentation or lecture. So those are some of the common things we do. We do a lot of things. We do everything that's needed by the student based on the documentation that they provide. So, but those are some of the popular things that we do. So the process is a little more simplistic than what you've had before than in K through 12, but we want it driven by some sort of medical documentation that describes what's going on. And it doesn't need to be the full IEP or the 504 plan, but usually there's a neuropsych sort of evaluation done mostly for learning disabilities. Those are very helpful. Just the report. The IEP usually has that report in it, if it exists. But maybe a psychiatrist has written off on the disability and described what the problems are to learning. And so documentation can come in a variety of forms, and that's why we are open to contact us to make sure you have the right stuff. Or if you want to email it to us and say, is this the right stuff? We're welcome to look at that and let you know, and then get you into our process. So, but basically the documentation comes in the three forms: that evaluation, the full-blown evaluation. Maybe it's a simple letter from your psychiatrist or psychologist or doctor describing the medical condition, the psychological condition, or the learning disability. Well, usually the learning disability will be pretty much always that evaluation. And then sometimes we do have a form that you can grab from our website, and it just asks all the right questions. Usually it's for medical conditions or psychological conditions that are a little bit less complex, but those are all the important information is out of that form. And you can give that form to your doctor. The doctor can give that form back to you, and then you can give that to us, or the doctor can give it straight to us. And there's determining on whatever the confidentiality of the doctor is, as long as we end up getting the information. And what we need is, what the next bullet point is, meet with a specialist for the intake meeting. We need two things. We need the student and we need the documentation in order to determine what accommodations are appropriate for that student. So those are our 2 points of information that are pretty important to us. The next bullet point is use accommodations as needed. Usually, and most commonly, that's at the testing center because there's so many exams and so many people need, students need help with exams. We have a whole process that we'll cover shortly in how all that works. And the last bullet point is consult with a specialist with the semester as needed. So signing the student up at the beginning, but is one thing, but we also want to help the student learn how to work the system because there's a lot of rules and policies and deadlines and those kinds of things from different offices. So we understand that maybe the student, maybe we don't do the activity that the student is interested. Maybe it's financial aid, maybe it's academic advising, those kinds of things. But if the student knows our address, we can point them in the right direction and maybe even say, well, you need to think about this, this, and this when you go to that office. So we can help navigate the student through the system as well. So use us as you need. All right, some of the differences between high school and college, just to prepare you for the mentally prepare you, the student, for what they're about to step into. So what the student is going to feel is nothing's going to happen unless they do something. So emailing the professor and asking questions about maybe an assignment, emailing or walking over to the academic advising office and asking questions about a class, or maybe is this class going to be offered next semester? You want to think about registering for it, those kinds of things. So we don't know that you're in distress or wondering about something. You need to come to ask us. So some of that you'll feel nothing's going to happen until you reach out and ask somebody. So self-advocacy is something that you're going to practice out of necessity. I think because you're going to realize we're not all in one building in knowing everybody's business. So going to this building or going to that office will be a normal thing. So get used to doing those kinds of things. Parent access to records. We're going to be a little bit more, you're 18. Most of you are 18, will be 18 when you're a student here. So we want students to be owners, have an ownership of their records. And so we want to defer to the student, and the student can give permission for parents to access records. We have only limited amount of information not about the grades and those kinds of things, but about accommodations and about their disability we do know about, which usually the parents and the students know about. So we're not privy to secret information too much, but we want to make sure the student is always in the conversation and that they're in charge of, their existence here, their time here, so their experience here. So that's some things that the parents will feel as we transfer over the student to the K through 12 system, to the college system. And so now the accommodations technically are to accommodate the experience of the student with the curriculum. We're not altering the curriculum. So if you have to do a 25-page paper, everybody's got to do a 25-page paper, but we might help you with some technology in writing that paper. Or you might go to the tutoring center, toward the writing center, and they will help you write the paper about that. But the standards of the course, accommodations usually don't touch, but we want to give more time to do the same assignment or do the same assignment in a different way, maybe using a computer versus a pen, those kinds of things. So sometimes accommodations are not appropriate, but we want students to ask. so they can learn how the accommodations work, how the system works, how the law applies to the college situation, because the law applies to K through 12, sometimes a little bit different. And a lot of students who with disabilities in K through 12 don't learn how the law works, unless they're in a lawsuit or something like that. But I think when you start to use accommodations more intimately in the classroom, you learn the nuances of what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, but we're here to help it. If you ask questions, we can explain things how things work and where our power is and where our power isn't. But we can help you navigate through any challenge for sure. All right, 1,600. We're That's about the number of students with disabilities that are registered with this office. So we have a pretty big volume of students who utilize accommodations, utilize our services, email us and ask us questions, pop in, and those kinds of things. So we're pretty busy office, but there's a lot of students out there like yourself, if I'm talking to the students. And so there's a lot of activity at our testing center. It's busting at the seams. So there's a lot of students that utilize testing center. There's a lot of students who are not in class during test day. They're at the testing center taking their test with us. So as you probably see students utilizing accommodations in college or in high school, you'll notice a lot of them using their accommodations in college as well. So you won't be standing out by any means whatsoever. All right. So outside the classroom, there's housing. And so sometimes the disability affects the way that you live with others. And so, but we want to make sure that some accommodations are in housing or appropriate, some are not, but we want to make sure that the process is clear. And that process is when you go apply for housing. So you accept Chapman, and if you do, then all the information comes to you about applying for housing, registering for classes, those kinds of things, financial aid. So when you follow the process to apply for housing, you look for something related to accommodations form, and that process is asking for housing accommodations. So you ask for housing, and you ask for housing accommodations in that form. You fill out, you have the physician fill out to explain what do you need. Do you need a single? Do you need a private room or private bedroom only with others in the class, in the apartment, or maybe a particular building or a particular location, those kinds of things. Um, and so we do have a housing committee that's behind the scenes that takes in all of these requests and deliberates them. And we do have limited inventory of those kinds of things. That's a housing office kind of thing. We're a disability classroom. That's our main focus in the classroom, but we do have a committee that's involved specialists of different areas that look at the documentation and make sure that what the student wants is what the disability requires, those kinds of things. So we're looking for the student to send the form to the provider, the doctor, but to follow those instructions really clear. And if they have any questions, they can contact us. And then, of course, that committee reviews that process. And it's done electronically over email. We find it to be most efficient, to email in general to be most efficient. And so you'll see a lot of emails in your inbox, in your Chapman school inbox. So make sure you pay attention to all those emails. Some will be trash, but make sure that you don't let anything fall through the cracks. So some of those emails could be about a deadline from administration office or academic advising or financial aid or the business office where you owe money. Make sure you don't overlook any of those emails that could be important. That's a big overall lesson for Chapman students or for college students in general. Um, Other support services. So we talked about accommodations in the classroom. We talked about accommodations in housing. And so non-accommodation, other support services that are utilized by Chapman students. Um, we do have an early entry program for students on the spectrum. Move-in day is chaotic, and learning a new comfort zone, a new schedule is challenging, it's taxing. So we have an early entry program because we know students on the spectrum, some typically have those kinds of challenges. So we've had permission to move in a day early, have the students on the spectrum and the parents come in to meet with us like the day before move in. And we have a day program where we walk around campus and we show them where everybody's going and um, the different, eyeball everywhere the buildings are and where the support services are, and help them get a jump start on developing that new routine without all the chaos of moving in and you know thousands of students around you. Because orientation week is as overwhelming as it is. So at least this is a soft entry to learning the college experience. The next bullet point, tutoring and learning center, academic mentoring. In what we call DeMille Hall is where the testing center is, but it is embedded with the tutoring center. So if a student has a problem with economics, so they would go to the tutoring site or the tutoring website and ask for an economics tutor. And then when they would find an economics tutor that's free during this time, that time, that time, then they would make sure that the student and the tutor are free, and then they can meet once a week and they can go over economics. So those kinds of things happen at the tutoring center, which is also where we do the extra testing time through our office through disability services. Um, Also in the tutoring center is a writing center. So if you're writing papers, you need help at the beginning of the writing process, at the end of the writing process, those kinds of things. They're there to help. And academic mentoring is the third service that the tutoring service provides. And that is not a classroom specific, but that's more organizing, taking notes, seeing what's coming down the pipe with the classes, staying on top of things. That's your academic mentor. I want you to think about that because challenges with overstimulation and being over having too much stuff coming at you all at once, like when you enter in college, academic mentoring can help you keep your eye on the ball with the different classrooms. There's a paper due in 3 weeks. It's a huge paper, or in 3 weeks, there's 4 things due in 3 classes. Those kinds of things. If that's a challenge to you, if you're worried about that, this is the office that'll help you not burn so many calories trying to keep up with everything. And then it's a free service. It's by a student, so a trained student. So when you go in there, it's once a week, 1 hour a week. And maybe after 4 or 5 weeks, you think you've got a handle on things, cancel it. Those things are fine. So it's better to get the support at the beginning and then maybe let go of it after you don't need it. But it's there at the beginning and it doesn't make this new experience so overwhelming at the beginning and so stressful. So anyway, it's academic mentoring. It's a website there under the tutoring center. So check it out. Now, the Spoonies is a student group. So it's one of the pretty much the only popular uh, disability related student group that we have currently, but it's growing and they we want all students with disabilities and without to know about the Student Spoonies group and to look them up and to see if they have any tables, as the picture suggests, when we have tabling out on the campus to swing by and get some information and learn what they do and what's going on and how to get involved and make we're trying what they're trying to do is one of our efforts as well, is make the community, make the experience of a disabled student more streamlined, more knowledgeable, to the average community member. We want students with disabilities to feel not like they have to do something separate to do their accommodations, but to move with everybody and, you know, those kinds of things. So we want to work on providing the service, but we also want to work on the community involvement and in perception of all kinds of disabilities. And so it's hard to do, but we want to make sure that we're loud and proud and we're all always out there and always seen. And it's just a normal part of life. That's our goal. So we want to see that happening on campus. And as new students are coming in and learning these things, they're going out in the community after graduation and carrying that on, that knowledge of how differences are. And sometimes they rise to the level of a disability. Sometimes they're just, I like to listen to information, or I like to read information. Those are kinds of common differences, but sometimes those differences rise to a level of needing accommodation. We want that level of process to be normalized. And so we're doing that. There's a lot of students with disabilities out there. So there shouldn't be any uncomfortableness about this, but we want to be the coach and advocate for you after your accommodations. And so going through the system, uh, feel comfortable emailing us or swinging by and asking us questions about how things work. And that's what we're there for. All right. So those are some of the highlights of how we do our job. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. And if you do, we want to be there for you and to show you how we do things. So I can see that Amelia just jumped in. So if anybody's been watching the Q and the questions, we can jump right into that.
Yeah, so I've been answering as Jason's been talking a few different questions that come up, but I flagged ones that I thought would be good to answer live that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about and are often questions that we receive anyway. So, Jason, your first question, how recent does the evaluation needs to be? The evaluation was a few years ago, but they're currently on a 504. Would we need to get a new evaluation done?
What's important out of the evaluation is what's going on with the student now. Is that reflected in the evaluation? And if it is, there's no need to get a new one because it's going to say the same thing. So if what's in the evaluation is what's going on with the student now, then it's safe to say, send us what you got. Now, if that says they got diagnosed with dyslexia at 3 and the documentation's from when they were 3, that's a little old. I want to know how the dyslexia is affecting this senior or junior now. So that's a little bit too old if it was from elementary school. So once again, that's our main goal. So there's no number associated with it, like 4 years old or 5 years old, that's too much. But like if it's a spinal cord injury, we want, and they still have the spinal cord injury, then that documentation can be a bit older because it's saying the same thing that's currently going on. So that's how we judge it. But if you want to email more details over to our DS line when you're getting ready to try to decide where to commit to, um, then you can send it to us, and if it's confidential, we'll tell you how we feel about it.
Awesome. So our next question, and you talked about this a little bit towards the end, but just to talk a little bit more about, does our center provide support for executive functioning? And I know you mentioned it with the tutoring learning center and the academic mentoring, but any other support for executive functioning in particular?
Mhm. Yeah, I look at it as this sort of steps. Step one, maybe you're an organizing kind of person, so you can have some fun with organizing when tests are coming and when papers are due with us because that's fine. And that doesn't take a lot of your time. That's okay. Now, the second level is that takes up a lot of your time trying to organize that stuff and prepare for the semester. So then you want to look toward academic mentoring. This lower level, help somebody help you organize your stuff. Something higher than that, your challenges are more pronounced than something a paid service that there's a lot of process tutors and organizers around the community or virtually, which is around the world, that you could utilize on a weekly basis, or maybe they have some service and help you do things virtually, through meetings or whatever. But we do have uh, one resource that's a paid service that's a little bit more intimate help uh, and I believe she's a psychologist, but her service is to help serve students, on a maybe meet with them twice a week and maybe help prepare emails and or strategize. You need to ask the professor this, and this about this project that's 5 weeks away, those kinds of things. Or they, there's a level of a paid service that's a level that's there that we do offer that um, we send in a little business her way. And so there's some students who need a little bit of extra attention, focusing on what's in front of them or what they need to have in front of them. So, but once again, those are resources that we have access to, that so you can contact us if you feel the red flag that the student is looking for is they're overwhelmed. They don't feel good. They feel pressure about, they don't know maybe something's due tomorrow. They don't know. Those are red flags. So reach out for help when those red flags occur because they won't go away on their own. So knowing us, knowing academic mentor is a good, safe start to find support.
Great.
Mhm.
On that same note, do any of the services such as tutoring or academic mentoring cost anything?
Um, Academic mentoring is free.
Mhm.
That paid service that I was talking about, or any other paid services, obviously not free. Um, Executive functioning, it's a common thing, and I think it depends on what level you're at. If you're able to have the challenge but overcome it through post-it notes or calendaring or whatever system you have, um, then okay, then I think academic mentoring will be probably suffice as long as you stick with it and use it. And um, then I think it's a challenge as well. So if it's an ADHD related executive functioning thing, think about the medication. And I know I've seen different thoughts of they need medication is they're really on it, or the family doesn't even like it, or thinks that the student needs to push through and focus and try harder and those kinds of things. But I want you to at least consider, because you are at medication if you're adverse to it, or you don't think you need it. But what's about to happen is your environment is about to be more chaotic. There's going to be more things coming out the student, and the student's going to have to juggle these things. So sometimes I've seen medication become more valuable and because the environment has changed. And those kinds of things need to be considered of course, a physician uh, about and knowing about the particular person and whether the side effects are minimal or aggravating or too much. Those kinds of things need to be considered because I want you to think about the environment that's around you that is changing too, and the things that they're going to throw at you. So that's what we've seen is um, taken some students aback about being overwhelmed and maybe that's the first, maybe that's the second semester, maybe the third and future semesters are easy breezy because you know what's coming at you. But be aware of your surroundings the first couple of semesters and know how your mind's going to react, how your body's going to react, how your disability is going to react to what you're the change that to bring yourself into, just to be aware. So I'll stop talking about that. But those are some of the things that some of the challenges that we've seen past students go through.
And just to kind of add on to that, tutoring services are also free. So if you know your student struggles with math, or maybe they're taking a language and, historically it hasn't been the best for them, but they still want to learn Spanish, that there's language tutors, and those are all free and available for all students at Chapman. So you don't need to be registered with our office in order to use them, that any student can have a tutor and walk in and use the services provided. The other thing that is also free in part of the, I guess, package for Chapman students is we also have a psychological counseling services house here on campus. So if your student, oftentimes, like the first semester is really overwhelming, so maybe they just need to meet with someone for a little bit to kind of talk through the first semester and missing home and navigating college life and all that kind of stuff. The psychological counseling services and meeting with the therapist is also free for Chapman students as well. And they also host like stress management workshops and conflict resolution workshops throughout the semester that your student is welcome to attend.
They have a good website too. So SPCS is their acronym. So do a little search and they have online ways to connect with them virtually and also in person. Very busy office.
Yes. For a student coming in, if they are accepted and they do decide to attend Chapman, and we hope everyone does, how soon should they start talking with the Disability Services Office to get accommodations in place before fall?
Um, well, if you want more information, we do information sessions, so virtually or in person, 30-minute session if you have questions or want to know more about what we need, about what the experience is here, maybe before you deposit. So summertime is our busy time that we're preparing for fall. So we're doing a lot of intake meetings. We're signing students up that have already applied to Chapman and they want to get their accommodations before they get here. And so that is after they have admitted to us, deposited to us. But before that, so senior year, if you're window shopping for where you want to go, or maybe it's your junior year and you're starting really early about putting your feelers out because disability services and the way accommodations are provided is important to you as a decision maker for you. You want to know what that looks and feels like. So there's no deadline. You can, but I think a summertime, the sooner the better, because we do have a wait list to get in to see us. So be mindful of timeliness of reaching out to us and asking questions, or if you wanted to sign up, summertime is usually the best. Uh, Probably midsummer
Mhm.
is midsummer or late summer is best, but you need to get in line to make that appointment. So make sure uh, if you locking down Chapman as one of your priorities, then reach out to us and we might be in the middle of finals week of the semester before. So, but we make sure that you can reach out to us and make sure that you are doing things in a timely fashion. But usually summertime is time to get your things together.
And just to add on to that, if your student does decide on Chapman, this is it, this is the one, and you want to send us your documentation ahead of time just to get that process started so we can review it. We won't necessarily meet with you until summertime, but if it's like April and you want to send over your documentation, we can hold it on file and then connect back out with you come summer or have your student reach back out to our office. Sometimes I know documentation is a little bit of a concern when starting that process of, is this okay, is this enough? That you're welcome to send us your documentation a little bit earlier than summer, and we'll just essentially hold it on file in our office and in our records until the summertime when we do start meeting with those incoming students. These next two questions are a little bit similar, and I wanted to touch on them briefly live. But depending on the major that a student chooses, are the accommodations the same for all of them?
Yes, because the accommodation is associated with a disability, not associated with Spanish or chemistry or econ. So we'll explain that in the intake meeting, but we want to make sure that we're accommodating the disability, not the classroom.
There's nothing in the chat right now, but I have my own question that I'm just gonna throw to you, Jason, if that's okay.
Okay.
What advice would you give to an incoming student to prepare themselves for um, advocating about their disability and accommodations and everything to college? What would you suggest and advise them to start doing as a graduating senior?
Oh, perfect. Yeah. To know themselves, to know how their disability affects their learning. And not that it's just hard, but as are, you, when you come to college, you're going to be driving the ship. You're going to be electing, I want to use this accommodation now, but I maybe not want to use it tomorrow. And that's up to you as a student. And so we want you to know what's where the problems lie, where the problem is going to arise before it arises. So if it's a chemistry class and you're bad at chemistry, you want to take all those chemistry tests at the testing center and get that extra time, whether you need it or not. But maybe it's a philosophy class, and those exams are where you write out what you think about something. And you don't need extra time for that because you have a very, very creative mind and you're blah, 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 and you write all that out. Maybe you need to type all that out versus handwrite all that out. But that's not a challenge to you because you know that. You know your disability doesn't affect philosophy as bad as it affects chemistry. And so you don't use accommodations for a philosophy class, but you use your accommodations for your chemistry class. You have that ability to make that choice. And they make that choice because they know the disability is going to impact them here, but not here. And so and I'm being generic, but maybe they have a touch of dyslexia and there's a very complicated chemistry readout to, I don't know, do homework in. But there's got a lot of jargon in it and that tricks your brain up. And so you'll need your accommodations of utilizing a computer to read that out loud or those kinds of things very more heavily in chemistry than you would in maybe a philosophy. So those would be examples of how the student knows their disability that lets them move through the system more fluidly, whether they need their accommodations and they got to go through those extra steps, or they're going to be fine without their accommodation and they're going to move through that activity more simplistically. Those kinds of things, we want the student to know themselves so they can make these decisions more readily, more confidently, more successfully. So I think reading the IEP, reading uh, the evaluation, if there was one, look at the summary, Look at what the doctor says that your strengths and your weaknesses are and know them, and then bring that to college. And maybe it's you're really good at quantitative stuff, but you're really bad at qualitative stuff. And soaking quantitative information is a breeze, but you need to sit down and sit aside and maybe find a quiet space to read that uh, more wordy qualitative stuff. And you know that, so you go make those right decisions, and you make those decisions early when you begin studying, so you have a more successful time study and those kinds of things. So I think what I've found is students don't know the disability, and they try to keep it under the rug and try not to let anybody know. And they go through those accommodation processes as keeping their head down, as low as they can. And they're not taking ownership of their disability. They're not saying, oh, that's a scary test. I need to go make a reservation at the testing center. I need to go online and start clicking some buttons and making a reservation 3 weeks before the test, because they know that's going to be a problem. So, knowing yourself, knowing what the doctors have articulated, and then applying that to your new environment that you're bringing yourself into is, I think, if that would have made a significant difference, or would have made their transition to college a lot easier if they knew those things ahead of time and saw them coming a week or two down the road when they look at the syllabus and they see that there's a big assignment due next week that includes 3 different types of processing, and they're really good at two and they're really bad at one. So they really lean on that one that they're bad at and put more time into studying from that angle, or versus what they can do pretty quickly and they know that already. So I think knowing your disability is pretty much what I wish more students would know when they would come in and see me.
Thanks. I would agree with all of that. And I often encourage students to start in those IEP meetings, to start becoming an active participant in them, and talking about and thinking about what accommodations do I use? What is actually helpful for me, and what might just be added onto the IEP that they haven't really used in any of their classes, or it hasn't been the most helpful for them. Um,
One thing that we do require students to do is to go into the system and grab a letter that states all of their accommodations, and they need to email that to the professor, to each of their professors each semester. So we let the students do that. So the students may just have extra testing time, and it doesn't need a long conversation. But maybe it's a classroom accommodation that, or maybe the students on the spectrum, and they want to email the professor, see attached that I do have accommodations. I'll be in your English 101 class next week. I have accommodations. Um, I may use some of them. I may not need all of them. But something about me, I typically sometimes stare off into the wall, but I'm actually listening. But that helps me focus because I'm now looking at something on the wall, but it's helping, those kinds of little nuances. If you know that you bring something different to the classroom, and how maybe you have a bad back and you are moving around all the time, those kinds of things are little icebreakers of information to email a professor, because we email all the time. Little questions, big questions. You can email the professor, oh, I'm looking forward to being in your class. See attached is my email or my accommodations. Oh, a little bit about me. I'm looking forward to being in your class and learning about history. And one thing about me is I do tend to take notes, and I do really interested in your material, but sometimes it looks like I'm distracted, or maybe it looks like I'm upset with material, but it's just I'm focusing and I'm listening to you. Those little things are would stop an aggravation coming up down the road between the professor and the student. The professor knew, oh, this student is meant to do that. this student is actually engaged in the material. They just look like they're doing something different than what I typically see. Those little nuggets of information you can email with your letter of accommodation that you will email to the professors. So that we do have a system in place to inform the professors. The student drives that activity of moving the letter from an online database that they have access to their professors. So we have some required things that help students be better agents of their accommodations.
Okay. And then can you talk briefly about or share some information about any like accommodations that are available for hard of hearing students?
Yes, we have CART, C-A-R-T, um, and that is, if anybody doesn't know, it's real-time captioning. So the professor's talking, the student that is hard of hearing is in the classroom, and there's a captionist who is typing away what the professor is saying, and the student in front of them has a laptop or a tablet, and the ongoing dialogue is there in front of them in real time. So if the professor says the cat jumped over the fence, they're looking at the screen, they're reading the cat jumped over the fence. So there's a typist in the back of the classroom listening with their ears, or they're virtual and they're listening through Zoom and they're typing away. The end result is still the same. The student is reading with their eyes what is being said in the classroom. And so we do have that. Uh, I want any student that is hard of hearing to research those recording apps. And so you can record the professor, you can have a visual and a auditory account of what they said. And depending on what technology the hard of hearing student uses, that might be suffice. They might not need CART. They might be okay with the real-time captioning. I mean, they might be okay with the recording as a studying tool. Um, uh, students, thirdly, students usually bring an FM system with them, an amplification system to where they sit it down and it goes through a Bluetooth to their cochlear implant to amplify what is being heard in the classroom. And sometimes that suffice if the classroom is okay. Classrooms are going to be different. Some classrooms are going to be small and quiet. Some classrooms are going to be full and a little noisy here and there, a little background noise. So I think depending on the classroom might depict on what kind of technology you use. Maybe you use CART for this class and that class, and maybe this other class you just use your audio recording. Those things, like I said, those are up to you, how you use your accommodation. And we provide cars, so we pay for it if it's needed. We have about 3 students using it now. And for graduate classes, for undergraduate classes. So those are some of the common services we have for hard of hearing.
Thank you. We're coming up towards the end of our time here today. If there are any last burning questions that anyone has that they haven't quite asked yet, I think we've gotten to most of them in the chat and in the Q&A, and they've been answered. But if anyone has anything lingering, feel free to put it in the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll get
Our website is very informative as well. So if you want to go to Chapman's website, and at the bottom of every public Chapman webpage, go down to the bottom, and in the black area, you should find disability services. That'll get you quickly over to our website where we have frequently asked questions. You can see what we tell professors to do and how to register for office. And so we have a lot of information at your fingertips.
um our last question just came in, and this was actually one I was going to pose anyway. So thank you for asking it. Can you comment on the overall culture at Chapman on students with disabilities, in acceptance, and as well as on the faculty, and just overall campus culture and climate regarding students with disabilities?
I'm pleased that a lot of faculty members don't they don't poo-poo the accommodations. They respect them. They're surprised when students aren't using them and they know about them. They want students to be successful and use them. Um, we have a couple, there's always professors that don't understand the nuances of the accommodations, and sometimes they don't feel that they fit in their curriculum, but those are few and far between. And that's when we come in and we're advocates for the student in helping the professor understand the ADA and some of the limits of their rigidity. Sometimes they need to be a little bit more flexible than they are. We don't do that a lot, luckily, but we want students to know when we're needed. So maybe the first point of resistance from the professor, they want to back off and they want to come to us and say, the professor says this, I think this, and then we will jump in carefully. We want to maintain that relationship between the student and the professor, but we want to make sure that we're coming from an educational viewpoint of what maybe the student is wrong, but maybe the professor is wrong in their understanding of how things work. We explain how things work, and then we tell them, please be flexible here and do that. And so we do that a lot. Or not a lot, but when we do, that's how we do it. It's more educational. It's all hunky dory. It's all fine and dandy. When we're done, we want to make sure everybody's. We don't come in with a wrecking ball and trying to change how a professor does their classes, but sometimes they designed it in such a way that it rubs against the ADA a little bit. That's usually an educational reason, or they weren't aware that they were doing that. So that's usually the reason behind that. Um, I think so. The accommodations are not a problem. I would want, since we have a rotating flux of humanity coming in, there's freshmen, they're leaving in 4 years. And so what we want to stay in that community is the understanding of the disability experience. And that's not just wheelchair users, um, but the invisible disabilities and the differences of learning need to be more. I think they're respected, but I think they need to be understood more. So that means you need to be out loud and proud and go into the testing center to use your accommodations and making that not a secret, making that not shameful. I think there's a little bit of room for growth there, but that's being present and being visible and letting your needs be known and not being shameful about it. I think those are ways to always change that culture.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and allowing us your time, giving us your time on this Saturday morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the world. This has been recorded and will be posted, and I believe you'll get a link following this as well. So we hope it was informative. If you do have any questions, feel free to email our office. Like Jason said, we do like informational meetings prior to maybe accepting or admitting or anything like that. So feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to meet you and talk with you specifically. Thank you.